Hello, ladies and gentlemen. It's a Ukrainian show on Pod TV. My name is Sasha Star, and my guest today is Dr. Jonathan Lockwood. Welcome to the show, Jonathan. I don't see Jonathan. I know that he's
There I am.
Hey,
There
now,
I
yes.
there I am. Thank you, Sasha. Well, I've got so busy I forgot to put on my glasses. Well, that's okay. Anyway, glad to be here as always.
Sure. So, Jonathan, what would you say that while Trump is waiting for Zelensky to come to Oval Office,
Hmm.
and at the same time, he's calling to Putin. And I don't know what he's going to tell, or he told Putin, or what Putin told him. How you view all these moving parts together?
What I see is that what basically now President Trump has clearly changed his attitude about Putin, and he's at the same time what he's doing both for public relations purposes as well as to remind Putin says, well, you still have a chance if you're willing to be reasonable and make a deal that everyone can be happy with, which would imply right now basically stopping his aggression and leaving Ukraine while he still can in one piece. He's right now his gestures towards Putin are more symbolic at this point than anything else, because he is Putin by his actions has very clearly demonstrated that he is not genuinely interested in peace, that he is still interested in capitulation of Ukraine and in attaining his maximum goals, as also illustrated by the fact that Russia is continuing its attacks on Ukraine's energy infrastructure. With the coming winter approaching, it is a variation on the terror attacks that the Nazis practiced against London in World War II during the Blitz. They are trying to break the morale of the civilian population and cause the Ukrainian people to somehow lose their support or their willingness to support Zelensky in defending Ukraine. That's not going to happen. If Ukrainian history is any precedent, the Ukrainians are not about to capitulate, especially when it is now evident that the Russians are suffering significant reverses and that their economy is becoming less and less able to support a full war effort. And my reading is that President Trump is going to meet with Zelensky today and grant his request, and make arrangements to deliver more Tomahawks, and thus enable them to increase the pressure on Russia. And so for right now, the correlation of forces, from my perception, from my viewpoint, is still moving very much in favor of Ukraine.
Jonathan, there's something else comes to my mind is that the even with all this previous talks between Putin and Trump failed, including Alaska, uh, but Trump still offers him, I don't know exactly what, but probably somehow finishes war. And let's say Putin refuses. How he can justify that even to his friends like China or others that he refused to stop the war? How he can do it?
Really, Putin does not have any really good options at this point. He really doesn't. He is in, as you would say in chess, Zugzwang. He has force nothing but force moves. And so right now, China and quite probably North Korea as well are increasingly looking upon this continue to support Russia as a bad risk. And despite the appearance of their trying to present a unified front of their axis with Russia, China, Iran, and North Korea, that is a very illusory alliance. It is not really bound by shared mutual interests. Opposition to the West, yes, but that's like honor among thieves. So it is not a very dependable alliance, and it is an alliance which can be fractured given suitable countermeasures, diplomatic and economic, taken by the United States and the West. So right now, that is still a very it is not something that I would be. I would not want to. I would certainly not want to be in Russia's position at this point, because they
No.
are a very, very unpleasant future, regardless of whether the war ends and they voluntarily end it and return home, or whether they are simply compelled and forced out of Ukraine, which, by the way, President Trump has been, tacitly and publicly encouraging Ukraine to do. He is saying that it is possible for Ukraine, unlike before. You remember before when he told Zelensky back in the Oval Office, "You don't have any cards to play," and and what did Zelensky do? He just nodded, went home, and then he promptly played his card by destroying a third of the Russian strategic bomber force. And now they have and Zelensky and the Ukrainians have more cards that they are going to play in the coming months. Even in winter, I would suggest they are going to have some very significant cards to play as they acquire new weapons and successfully incorporate them into their force structure. And I predict, I will go out on a bit of a limb here, Sasha. I would say that the Ukrainians might pull off something similar to what the Germans pulled off in the winter of 1944. They might well unleash a surprise winter counteroffensive, given whatever weapons they have, and it would not be obvious.
You mean Russians can surprise by doing what Germans
No,
do?
I would say the Ukrainians could pull off a surprise counteroffensive on their
I'm
part
sure
against.
Germans were losing side on the Second World War.
Right.
Ukrainians are not.
Correct, but
No.
in this case, this would be a counteroffensive which would be even more to the advantage of the Ukrainians than the Russians. The Russians, they can't really escalate anymore unless they go to nuclear weapons, which would be practically suicidal on their part. So really, I think the Ukrainians have a significant opportunity here if they choose the right time and place to inflict a decisive counteroffensive blow that will permanently cripple any hopes that the Russians have of obtaining success.
But look, on the front lines, there are no changes now for some time because Russians had the great losses of thousands plus a day. They're taking 50 meters here and 25 meters there, and maybe half kilometers some other place.
And that doesn't mean, they can't hang on to it. It's not like
next day they're taking back the territories that Russia, and Russians lost another 500 people. It's not sustainable. Even that Russia has a great reservoir of people who are ready to go to the war and kill people for money, but even that is not.
That's not sufficient Sasha, that's not sufficient motivation, not even for the Russians. And so it's going to be, it's now, I hate to say a matter of time. It is the grim arithmetic, as some people used to call it, is working very much in favor of Ukraine. And the Ukrainians have successfully been able to use their drone technology and their offensive and defensive drones to create both an offensive weapon and a defensive shield behind which the Ukrainian army can hide.
Well, Ukraine is now a world leader in the drone technology and knowledge and experience to use them. They're second to none, and even Americans are now trying to work with Ukrainian companies to perfect the drone technologies.
And this would be, and Sasha, this would be a very cost-effective thing for the American military to do, and something that Secretary Hegseth is already trying to take advantage of in exploiting this new drone technology and making arrangements with the Ukrainian military. And that it would not at all be humiliating at all for the American military to acknowledge that it needs to learn certain valuable lessons from the Ukrainians and this Russian-Ukrainian war. It would prepare the American military for any future contingencies that it might find itself involved in, or be able to contribute. We could, in turn, could help improve drone technology with our own little innovations and further strengthen Ukrainian security. It's a mutually beneficial partnership,
Absolutely.
one that we should continue by all
Yeah,
means. And this could lead to uh, a broader cooperative effort between the United States and Ukraine. So this is all to the good. Yeah, it's a shame that it has to occur because of a Russian invasion of Ukraine, but nevertheless, we must look for the good that in fact can come out of this. So this will further uh, strengthen Ukrainian security, and as Ukrainian security is strengthened, this will create an environment in which Ukrainian economic recovery can take place, reconstruction, repairing the damage, create an incentive for all those Ukrainians who had decided to flee the country when the Russians invaded. Now they will have a very strong incentive to come back and help rebuild and help become part of a prosperous, strong Ukraine. All of that is good. Yeah, there is. Uh, I hate to say that this had to happen in order for some good to come out of it, but there is in fact a good that can be gained from a Ukrainian victory in this war. So this is something that we need to keep a careful eye on. As I said in a previous program, never take your foot off the neck of a dying cobra, because the Russians can still lash out. They themselves, in their own discussions during the Cold War, they warned about the crisis of capitalism. They warned that the United States might lash out in a nuclear conflict. All that was, Sasha, as I said before, was merely a projection of the Russian thinking. That is what they would do if they were faced with a losing situation. They would be tempted to lash out with nuclear weapons. So that we must be wary of this, because this is still something that a desperate, irrational leader that Putin is rapidly becoming, if he has not become that already, he could take that sort of measure. And so we have to be you can take another leaf from the Russian discussions, in which they said only the threat of a massive retaliatory blow will stop the imperialists. Well, if we detect that the Russians are actually planning a nuclear strike, it is incumbent upon the West to warn Russia. We have the capability to inflict a massive retaliatory blow. So don't even think about starting a nuclear conflict.
Unlike you, we have the right cards to play.
We have the cards, we have the weapons, and we are pretty sure that all of our nuclear weapons work just fine.
Yeah, yeah. Russians now for more than 20 years, probably 30 years, they never tried their nuclear weapons, even to see.
They haven't tested it as far as you can tell.
No.
Haven't tested their nuclear weapons, which is a significant signal, because in theory, one could test with. We in the West, we have been talking about using computer models to, in effect, do a computer test of our nuclear weapons, which is possible. But I do not believe that the Russian computer technology or level of computer technology is such that they are able to test their nuclear weapons using computer models. Even so, even if they did have those kinds of models, you still have to reckon with the possibility of Russian corruption. The fact of corruption, that you for whatever reason, cannibalizing their own nuclear arsenal for profit or for personal gain, who knows what. But there is enough evidence of corruption in other elements of Russian logistics and supply to suggest that not even their own nuclear arsenal is immune to the possibility of corruption and,
Well,
malfunction.
agree 100%. So right now we are looking into tomorrow's meeting with Zelensky. It would have been more or less straightforward. Okay, Tomahawk, yes or no? If yes, on what targets to use it, and how many, when, and so on. Now, in view of his talk to Putin yesterday, and now it's becoming somewhat different equation. Zelensky is already in the United States, so he was not warned about Trump's talk to Putin. So if it would have been in the United States yet and Trump called to Putin, maybe he could postpone his trip or maybe even cancel his trip at this time based on what Trump will probably meet Putin in the next 2 weeks and see what they will discuss and agreed upon. It seems to me that Trump's strategy is to keep Zelensky close by as much as possible by promising him that he will may allow Tomahawks to be used by Ukraine without promising that. So he's not completed his decision yet as we talk. So Zelensky have to be there and be very loyal and waiting. Maybe Trump will announce just that. At the same time, he wants to keep Putin also close by to see, well, look, okay, it didn't work out a month ago, 3 months ago, 5 months ago, even 7 months ago. But there's still a chance it may all wonderfully work out. Zelensky will agree to peace. He already told me that. Now I'm talking to you. So what you gonna say? That you don't agree to a peace? What? Just say something.
Yeah, Trump is in a much stronger position now. He is now in a position where he can play the strategy that he is comfortable with. You notice he is very comfortable when he is in the position of deal maker, and
Yeah.
he wants to get back into that position of deal maker. In order to be a deal maker in this situation, you have to, of course, number one, be in a position of strength, which Trump is striving to do, and to be in that sort of position. But at the same time, you want to show enough flexibility and give your opponent enough of an incentive to where continued war looks a lot less attractive than agreeing to a peace, even if it's an imperfect one, or even if you don't get everything that you wanted, or even if you get nothing. Even if you get nothing except getting to go back and return home and lick your wounds and try to recover from the what is apparently defeat, as long as Trump is in a very strong position, and he is trying to play it very carefully. He has been learning very steadily. At first he was mistaken because he had misread the situation and misread the capabilities of both sides. But now that he has a much clearer picture, now that he knows what the relative strengths are, and if someone were, for example, to point out to him, or at least give him a summary of the experiences that the Ukrainians have had vis-a-vis the Russians over the past century, he would be more convinced that, yeah, I got to back the right horse here. I have to back the winner, and the winner he should be backing is Ukraine.
Jonathan, I have a different theory. He is not trying to back a winning horse, even when he was so clearly supporting Russia several months ago, or now where he appears to be supporting Ukraine. Supposedly, Trump has to strive to see this war lasting as long as possible because Europeans are buying American weapons for billions of dollars. So America is making profit and it's good business for America. So why not to continue to do the good business for America? In my opinion, it is that Trump really wants peace. He doesn't want Ukraine win or Russia win. He really wants peace. Why he wants peace? Because he believes that peace would bring him much more money than selling weapons to Ukraine via European Union. Why he's going to make so much money if peace is achieved? Because there are millions of investment possibilities in Russia. It's rebuilding Ukraine. It's so much economic activities. And the beauty of it is that Trump, as he usually does, operates with other people's money. Why he has Qatar is ready with trillions of dollars, United Arab Emirates already, Saudi Arabia, trillions of dollars here and there. It's all there. So all Trump has to do to somehow make a peace. Okay, he has to make a pressure on Zelensky and a pressure on Putin and try to harden a little bit a lesser extent, then try harder again. So eventually, at the end of the day, there will be a peace. Okay, it doesn't matter. Ukraine will lose 4 territories or 3.5 or 18% of its territory or 28% of its territory. For Trump, it doesn't matter as long as there is a peace and he can get all this financial machinery in place. This is what I'm reading. Would you agree, John?
I would agree to a certain extent. Trump definitely wants a peace because obviously that would support his desire to be eventually nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize and all of which is a well-known stated desire of his. And the fly in the ointment here is Putin's intransigence, as Putin is and other Russian leaders have repeatedly stated their desire to not just get a part of Ukraine, they want all of Ukraine. They have not renounced that desire. And so what you have here is a situation where Russia can continue to be stubborn and continue to engage in attacks, missile attacks and drone attacks upon Ukraine. But as I pointed out, the military correlation of forces is not moving in Russia's favor. They are going to incur increasing losses, increasing damage, and especially if Trump agrees to Zelensky's request for more for Tomahawk missiles and to have the freedom of action to use them in any manner they see fit, that will bring Moscow within range as well as the rest of Russia's economy. And that will, in turn, just increase the level of pain for Russia and increase the price that they will have to pay once the war is in fact over. So right now, while from Trump's perspective, in an ideal world, he would love to have a peace that could be that he could claim the lion's share of the credit for, and that would be a nice, desirable outcome. Unfortunately, Russia's stubbornness and aggressive aims are not going to make that possible. He may have to settle for second best, and second best is not really bad for Ukraine at all. Basically, a Ukrainian victory, which forces Russia to withdraw from those oblasts and go back to the pre-war borders. And as a nice added bonus, if Ukraine can execute a successful counteroffensive, which gets Crimea back under Ukrainian control, then that is the icing on the cake, so to speak. And that would be a very good outcome. So I would say, while your scenario of a peace in place with Russia retaining control of certain parts of Ukraine is a possible one, I would say that the more likely outcome, and I would contend the more desirable outcome, is an outright Russian defeat, and one which teaches Russia a lesson that not to even think about undertaking a war against Ukraine again, particularly since Ukraine will take measures once the war ends to strengthen its military position along with that of its European partners to ensure that Russia is not in a position again to execute an offensive war against Ukraine.
Jonathan, what strikes me is that Trump could, through Ukrainian efforts, Ukrainian sacrifices, to achieve something 1,000 times bigger than Nobel Peace Prize. He could dismantle a Russian war machine once and for all, because for the last 80-some years, the West was in great fear of Russian invasion, Russian use of nuclear weapons, and so on. And right now, Ukraine is getting so close to dismantle all that, because it doesn't mean that Ukrainians have to take over Moscow. They don't.
No.
If
No.
you push Russian armies from the Ukrainian proper, then Russians will take care of Putin. Russians will do the changes required to make country a normal participant of the world affairs. So Trump is so close to that. Doesn't anybody would point it out to Trump?
Well, perhaps our producers can get it through, can get our program through certain channels to the Trump administration. Say, Mr. President, we have something to tell you, and perhaps he'll have to get the word that way, because we seem to be the only ones saying it. But right now, if you look at all the other conventional military analysts out there, they are not talking in anything. They're not talking about anything along the lines that we have been discussing over the past several months, and indeed over the past year. So yes, there is 3 years really. If you were to go back and sort of trace through all the programs that we've done, it has been this steady trend toward that has run counter to most of the discussions you see on other programs. So we are kind of like the lone prophets in the wilderness until finally they start paying attention. And then, and of course, what's going to happen, Sasha. When what we have been saying is in fact finally comes to pass, all of those other analysts are going to start saying, "Oh, we knew this all along." See, we knew this was going to happen. Yeah, right. Sure, you did.
Jonathan, I think we covered a lot of things. We will know much more in next few days. Definitely by Tuesday, when we will get back together, hopefully with Ivan, and we will discuss the Zelensky's visit, and we'll discuss the Putin's communications with Trump. So it will be even the more interesting.
Yeah, the situation on the chessboard will become a lot clearer as more pieces are removed, particularly Russian ones.
Yeah, with that, I would like to thank you again for today's program. Have a great weekend, all our listeners as well. And we'll see you on Tuesday, same place, same time. Bye-bye.
God bless America. God bless America.
And Ukraine. Bye-bye.